Ready when you are. So, welcome to Powerless Penguins United Big Book Study. This week, I'm pleased to introduce Max back from her annual leave to share on the book. And over to you, Max. You've got about 45 minutes.
Thank you so much, Laws, for bringing us our feet on the ground and getting some quiet in the room. When I jumped on here this morning, the atmosphere was electric. Like they say in A Vision for You, here was a haven at last. So thank you, everybody, for being here this morning. It's great to be back. Feels a little strange. And to be honest, I'm a little bit nervous. But all will be well, all is well, because it is always well. So my name is Mags. I'm a very grateful, recovered alcoholic. Drugs are part of my story also. It's great to see everybody, a few familiar faces that have been here since the start of the book study and a few new ones, so welcome. Just so you know, I'm not in my own home at the minute, so there might be interruptions. There's a dog beside me. Some children might come in. If the internet goes a bit wobbly, Laws knows to wait for a couple of minutes because it all of a sudden pops back in again. So don't go anywhere. Just give a little bit of a moment and we'll come back again. And I smiled as the chat was going on before the meeting started. Somebody came into the room and said, "Oh, I haven't been in this book for a while." That made me smile. It's great that you're here on a Saturday to get back into this book. And don't leave it between this Saturday and next Saturday to get back into the book. We hang together in these fellowships, like it says in the foreword to the second edition. We hang together or we die separately. It seems like quite a morbid thing to say on a Saturday morning, but that's the reality of what we have, this illness of addiction, this progressive illness of addiction. And the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is the only place that you will find the solution. It's the only place that you will find the program of recovery. It's the only place that you will find the program of action. I say this all the time. Of course, there's other literature that is available that we can build upon and all of that. But if you want to have a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, then the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is where you will find it. So I'm delighted to hear that you haven't been in the book for some time. And here we go, new beginnings. So let's start with setting aside that set aside prayer. Let's set aside every single thing we think we know about this program, about our recovery, about the 12 steps, so that we may have a new experience with you, God. Whether you have a God or not, whether you believe in God or not, whether you are willing to believe in God or not, set aside every single thing you think you know to have this new experience with God, and so that you may be shown the truth. In saying that prayer, it's a very powerful spiritual tool. Because when I go into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I use a lot through sponsorship, which I use a lot through service, I can have the tendency to think I know when I open this book. And therefore I become a block already. So that's why I set aside every single thing I think I know that's something new can be brought to the party. And it's not just coming from a place of what I think I know, because what I think I know for me is often not the thing that I need. It's as simple as that. And what I think I know about what I need is certainly not what you need, because you're having your own experience with this power that is greater than you. So where we are in the book is we're on page 37. We're right in the heart of more about alcoholism. And I think I said a couple of weeks ago when we started into this chapter, when my sponsor brought me into this chapter on page 30 where it starts, and he said to me, "You need to know more about alcoholism." I kind of rolled my eyes and chuckled. Well, I didn't kind of. I just simply rolled my eyes and thought, oh my God, seriously? We're on page 30 and he's telling me that I need to know more about this nonsense? And yeah, I did. Because in this chapter, it's a very detailed look at the mental obsession. So the mental obsession begins on page 23 in the heart of There is a Solution. And we continue to learn about the mental obsession till the end of this chapter on page 43. So we're on page 37. We're going to be starting in the paragraph that begins in some circumstances. But before we get to that point, let's do a little bit of a recap. So not only are we in the heart of the mental obsession, we're in the heart of step one. So step one being we admitted we were powerless. So we let in the idea that we were powerless over alcohol, whatever it is that we're addicted to, and that our lives have become unmanageable. So we've already covered the physical allergy and the doctor's opinion. We're now into the second thing that we're powerless over, which is the mental obsession, which is the preoccupation with this totally and utterly unreasonable idea that we can pick up one drink. And the piece of the book that we're going into now really brings that alive. This preoccupation, this mental obsession that we'll be okay if we use once and pick up one drink, and the insanity of that, because that's ultimately what it is. It's insanity. And it explains it very clearly in the piece that we're going to read here. We've already covered 2 stories within this little chapter, of which there are 4 in total. We've covered the guy with the carpet slippers, who after 25 years thought it was going to be okay to pick up one drink, and having done that was dead within 4 years. So no matter how long you give up this thing that you're using of your own self, of your own willpower, no matter how far away down the line you are in terms of years away, days away, and whatever, if you haven't tapped into something, you may, well, sorry, I've lost my train of thought because I read a message in the chat there, sorry. Stay focused, Max, stay focused. So yeah, even after 25 years of doing this by yourself, you may still think, okay, one drink's not going to harm me after all this time. One use is not going to harm me after all this time. Well, that's delusional. And that delusion and that illusion has to be smashed. The second story we go into is Jim. I call him the milkman. He's the guy that put whiskey into milk and thought it wouldn't harm him. He's the guy that failed to enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice with others. He made a good beginning in the steps. He started the steps and worked them up to step 11, but didn't do step 12. And I learned from somebody who's much wiser than me that this is not an 11-step self-help program. This is a 12-step recovery program. If you want full-blown recovery, then a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps is the thing that's going to bring you to that point. The reality of it is, I don't come to this fellowship to get relief from alcohol. I don't want to be just a wee bit of relief every now and again. I want to have full-blown recovery, and that's what has been given to me. By the grace of God and working with a sponsor and getting into this book and turning the pages and simply taking the action. When there's an instruction, I take the instruction. When there's a question, they give me the answer inevitably at some point along the way. I say to my sponsees all the time, if we do the work, it works, and if we don't, it won't. It's that simple. And if we follow the clear-cut directions, we're guided ever so gently. I didn't like doing it. I made more hard work of it than I probably needed to. But it couldn't be clearer because everything is set out in such masterly detail, like it says in the doctor's opinion. So we're going to go into potentially another 2 stories today. The first one we'll definitely cover because we'll have time to do that. We'll just see how it goes. For those that haven't been to this meeting before, I just kind of go with the flow, get as far as I can in the 40 to 45 minutes and see what happens. So yeah, let's get into it. The first story that we're going to get into, they call an illustration. It's such a powerful, powerful illustration. But before we get into it, there's a little paragraph that we're going to cover. Oh, as well as the 4 stories, of course, we need to know that there's 3 little caveats within More About Alcoholism as well. they're not tests. That's the wrong word. I still haven't found the right word for it, but there's 3 little pointers within the chapter as well where we think about, and if you haven't heard the previous recordings, it's explained in that, but at the bottom of page 31, or no, in the middle of page 31, it talks about, have you tried drinking like a gentleman? Whatever that means. Try drinking like a lady, whatever that means. If you've tried drinking like a lady and it hasn't worked, if you've tried drinking like a gentleman and it hasn't worked, then that's the first little pointer that you may not have any control, power, or choice over what you're using. At the bottom of page 31, it then talks about stepping over to the nearest bar room and trying some controlled drinking. It's not giving you the permission to do that. It's asking you to recall the fact, have you tried to step over to the nearest bar room and tried some controlled drinking? And the fact of the matter is that if you're really honest with yourself, and you have tried to do that, you haven't been able to control it. And then the last little caveat is, have you tried to give it up for a year or more? And in actual fact, only after a few weeks, you haven't been able to control it and you're doing the same thing again. So those 3 little things in there are important to remember the context of that in which they're shown in the book. I've put my number in the chat at the beginning of the meeting. If anybody has any queries about that part of the book, then feel free to reach out, let me know. And I'll explain them within the context of the book, because hearing it just now might not make any sense. So, page 37. In some circumstances, we have gone out deliberately to get drunk or use, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. The important thing to understand about this part is that when it says or the like, we're talking about the opposite of all of those things. So sometimes with sponsees, or you hear people in the rooms, oh, I've gone out and I've used and I've had a drink because something really bad has happened and and you hear all of the woes, the guilt, the shame, the remorse, whatever you want to call it. That's the reason why I picked up a drink. Or the like. I had to watch myself because I deliberately, back in the day, would have picked up because of jubilation, because of joy, because of celebration, because of a lift in my personality. I didn't only pick up when I was down and depressed. I picked up over anything. It says sometimes in the rooms you hear people say, you got to find out the reason why you drank. What? The reason why I drank is because I liked the sense of ease and comfort that it brought me. Whether I was jubilation, whether I was high on life, or whether I was depressed with low self-esteem. I didn't need a reason to drink. I didn't need to find out the reason why I drank. The reason why I drank is because I liked the effect that it had on me. And that's so clearly explained in the doctor's opinion. I didn't need to find out the reason why I drank was because I was bullied at school, or I didn't get the job, or I failed my driving test, or, somebody stole all my money. I didn't need to get into all of that. What I needed to work out in step 1 was not work it out even. I didn't need to work anything out. It's set out in the big book. I needed to understand what I suffered from. I needed to understand what I was powerless over. I needed to understand I was powerless physically and mentally. I needed to understand that my life had become unmanageable as a result of my using and drinking. I needed to understand why I kept picking up the first drink. Nobody ever told me that. So let's be clear. When we've gone out deliberately because of the things that are set out here or the like, it's important to understand that. But even in this type of beginning, we are obliged to admit. To admit means to let the idea in. We're obliged to let the idea in that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of what always happened. Hear those words, people. Hear those words. What always happened. Our justification. Let's be honest with ourselves, because we know now at this point, having been in the spiritual experience at the back of the book, Appendix 2, page 567 into 568, What we need to have at this point, which is completely and utterly indispensable, which are completely and utterly essential requirements for this program, is that we need to have the willingness, we need to be honest with ourselves, and we need to have a really open mind. So if you're being really honest with yourself in this moment, you know, I know, you can justify any reason under the sun for the pickup. In your mind, you can justify any reason. But here's the thing. If you're really honest with yourself, you know the same thing's going to happen again. Because it's always happened. What's going to make it different this time? Really and truly, what's going to make it different this time? Nothing. Because the same thing's going to happen again. You have no power, you have no choice, you have no control. We know this by this stage in the program. We know this by this stage in the program if you're working the steps with a sponsor. Because you cannot do this by yourself. We now see that when we began to drink or use deliberately, instead of casually, there was little serious or effective thought during the period of premeditation of what the terrific consequences might be. Think about this. We're in the mental obsession, page 23 to 43, like I've said. The thought, we never give any thought during the period of premeditation of what the terrific consequences might be. We know this already. It's not when we're drunk. It's not when we've already started using. It's not the hangover. It's not the during. It's not the after. It's the premeditation. This is the problem. It's what happens before we pick up. It's what happens before we use. It's our thinking before that point. That's what we need to get to the crux of. Because it's the premeditation of thinking that we can use one more time and that we can pick up one more time and the consequences aren't going to be the same as before. The reality of it is, it's insanity if we think we're going to behave differently or it's going to impact us differently. We've got no power, no choice, no control. It tells us that on page 24. We know that by this point. So here's the thing. They go into this most wonderful illustration. This is the third story within this little, this one chapter. I mean, the knowledge that is in this, the power of what is in more about alcoholism, what we understand about our inability to control, and the fact that this mental obsession is the thing that needs to be dealt with. They reiterate, they emphasize and re-emphasize again and again to get it into our minds that we are not normal when it comes to this. My sister and brother have a really normal reaction, right, to alcohol. I have a completely and utterly abnormal reaction to alcohol, which is a completely and utterly normal substance. But I react differently to it, and that's what I need to start understanding. So I'm just going to go read through this story. It's important to set aside every single thing you think you know. And as you're going through this and listening to these words, is this me? Is this me? Is this me? Doesn't matter the context in which they're given this story. I just would like everybody in the room to ask themselves, is this me? Was this me? You may be sitting in the room and haven't been in the book for some time and have forgotten about this story, but recall this. It's important to be reminded. Our behaviour is as absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink. Hear that. In respect to the first drink as that of an individual with a passion, say, for jaywalking. Don't know if there's very many people in this room that have done some jaywalking. You might be doing it. You might have done back in the day. But the activity doesn't really matter. Could be anything. But remember, in respect to the first drink, in respect to picking up, whatever it is this you? He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years, in spite of friendly warnings. Up to this point, you would label him as a foolish chap having queer ideas of fun. Luck then deserts him and he is slightly injured several times in succession. You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. Presently he is hit again, and this time he has a fractured skull. Within a week after leaving the hospital, a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. He tells you he's decided to stop jaywalking for good, but in a few weeks he breaks both legs. On through the years, this conduct continued, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful or to keep off the streets altogether. I'm going to stop altogether. Finally, he can no longer work. His wife gets a divorce and he is held up to ridicule. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. Every known means. He shuts himself up in an asylum, hoping to mend his ways, but the day he comes out, he races in front of a fire engine, which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? Now, my experience of this is when I read the book by myself. I can remember sitting at the kitchen table in the house next door to where I am now, because I wasn't allowed to live in this house. Somehow or other, I convinced the person next door to take me in. I'd already started to go to meetings. I wasn't doing the work, so it wasn't working. Somebody very kindly provided me with a big book, and I sat at the kitchen table and I read this story. And I got to the bottom of where I've just read, such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? And I remember closing the book and going, that's nuts. That's nuts. Why would anybody do that? I didn't even realize at that time that that was me. I didn't understand it. I then went back to the book and started at this paragraph. You may think our illustration is too ridiculous. I did think that that illustration was too ridiculous. But is it? Ask yourself this. We who have been through the ringer have to admit, we have to let the idea in that if we substituted alcoholism, addiction for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. And it does. However intelligent we may have been in other respects where alcohol using has been involved, we've been strangely insane. It's strong language. But isn't it true? It's 100% accurate. It's 100% real. The jaywalker is the perfect illustration for everybody that thinks that they can pick up the first drink. Because as we know from picking up the first drink, we set off the phenomenon of craving. It manifests itself in the phenomenon of craving, which means that we want more and more and more and more. And when we're not drinking, when we're not using, we have this mental obsession that one drink is going to solve it. We pick up one drink to give us the sense of ease and comfort. The sense of ease and comfort. It's not real. It's only a sense. The cycle continues. Yet we know the impact that it always has on us. It's strangely insane, but it's totally and utterly true. And if you're sitting here in this room, or you're thinking that you're going to be different and that you can have one more attempt to try to control, that your willpower is going to work and that you have got a choice over what you're taking, you have not. It makes me laugh when people say, what's your drug of choice? What's your drink of choice? I ain't got one. That's the reality of an alcoholic. That's the reality of an addict. What's your drug of choice? Really? Don't think so. Knock that one out of your head. You haven't got a choice. You react abnormally to a really normal substance being alcohol that other people can use quite sensibly. We got to get rid of the illusion. We get rid of the delusion that you can drink and use like other people. It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. It's never going to change. If you are a real alcoholic, that one that is described on page 21, that one who has at some point in their drinking career lost all control. And you think about it, it tells us in the paragraph, the last paragraph in the forward to the 4th edition, we come to these fellowships to stay sober, to stop all together. That's what it says in the Jaywalker as well. All together. I don't know whether that's you or not. But again, if you're in this room and you're listening and you're listening to the recording and you think you're coming in just to get a wee bit of control, or to work out how you can use safely and drink safely and moderate, then that's not what we're here for. That is not what the fellowship is for. Our responsibility is to carry the message, to help people overcome, and for the problem to be solved completely and utterly, for it to be removed. Like it says on page 17, the problem is solved. And the fact of the matter is, if you're sitting in this room, you think you have a problem. There's something deep down within you that's telling you that you need to sort something out. And sitting in the rooms, not doing the work, not being in the book, not having a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps is not going to solve the problem for you. That's the reality of it. And I make no apologies for being the Grim Reaper. I really don't. I just want to say you're welcome. Because this is what I have to tell you. This is the only thing I have to tell you. Through better experience and working with others, this is the truth. I know that what is in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous is the truth. You're not going to find that truth anywhere else. And I would be doing people a disservice. I would be doing my sponsees a disservice if I didn't tell them the truth about what is going to happen to them. So if I'm disturbing you about the drink and using problem, I'm doing a good job. And that's not me being egoic in any way, shape or form. That's the instruction that it gives me in working with others. If I have disturbed you about the drink or the using problem, then there's something inside you that has been lifted. There's something inside you where there has been a glimmer where you might know you need what we have, which is the solution that will solve your problem. So there you go. Having said all of that, some of you, last paragraph on page 38, some of you are thinking, here we go, because it's all about this illness that centers in our mind. We know that already from previous paragraphs and previous chapters. This illness centers in our mind. The elimination of our drinking was but the beginning. Some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply. Thanks for the information, Mags, but it doesn't really apply to me. Jog on, happy Saturday, I'm away. How's that going for you is what my sponsor would say to me. We admit, so we've let the idea in, we have some of these symptoms. Now when I talk about, and when the book talks about the symptoms of alcoholism, we know from previous times when I've spoken about this, the symptoms are the physical allergy, the mental obsession. They're the symptoms that we're talking about. See anything else that people talk about as being the symptoms? I don't know what they mean. The isms. You know I have a joke about this. The isms. I've got the isms. What are they? The isms. The I, the self, the me. Really? Okay. Is that why I'm an alky? Is that why I'm an addict? Because of the isms? That doesn't mean anything to the newcomer when they come into the room. How do they know what the isms are? How do they know what I, self, me means in relation to why they're picking up? How do they know? They don't. We need to talk to them about the facts. We need to talk to them, and you need to understand, I need to understand the physical allergy and the mental obsession. Couldn't be clearer on this. Let's not confuse the newcomer. Let's not confuse ourselves. Let's not justify our existence and why we use by getting away from the facts that we have a physical allergy and a mental obsession that needs to be addressed. So we admit we have some of these symptoms. So some of you might be thinking, yeah, kind of have that mental obsession because every time I'm not drinking or using, I'm thinking about drinking or using. Well, that's your mental obsession. And I kind of think I have that kind of allergy symptom thing where, yeah, when I pick up one drink, I have to have more. That might be you. You might be an alcoholic. You might be an addict. So keep on having an open mind and being honest with yourself and being willing to listen to this stuff that your sponsor's telling you. Because it could change your life. But here's the thing. We have not gone to the extremes which you fellows did, nor are we likely to, for we understand ourselves so well after what you've told us that such things cannot happen. You know, the bitter experience of the consequences of my behaviours may not be the same as yours. And mine are not the same as yours. vice versa. You know, I don't know how many people in this room, but nobody's experience and behaviours and conduct are identical. Everybody's journey to get here is exceptionally unique. It's and exceptional. So if you're coming in here to find somebody who's exactly the same as you, who's used exactly the same as you, who's drank exactly the same as you, you're going to be waiting around for a very, 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 very long time doing nothing. Because everybody's journey genuinely is so unique and exceptional. However, the thing that is important to understand when you work with your sponsor, if you be an alcoholic addict, we all have those symptoms in common. And that's what you're looking for. What are the commonalities? What are the things that you can identify with? Not the differences. You know, I did end up in prison. I did end up in sales. I did end up losing my home. I did end up losing my job. I didn't lose my license. God knows how, but I didn't. I did lose my family. I did. All of that. But there's many things that didn't happen to me. But I'm still the same as you. We've not lost everything in life through drinking, and we certainly do not intend to. I didn't intend for all of the stuff that happened to me to happen, but it did. It did. I was drinking against my will in the end. I was using against my own will in the end. Everything that I didn't expect to happen did. I never thought that I was alcoholic, but I am. I never thought I'd become a daily drinker. I did. I never thought I'd become a daily user. I did. I never thought I'd become an hourly drinker. I did. I never thought I'd end up in rehab. I did. That's the progression of the illness. That's what they're talking about on page 30. I didn't really think that I would end up to a near death, and I mean near death experience, but I did. And it wasn't until I reached pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization that something happened, something altered, where I had no other option than to accept the solution that you guys were offering me. Sitting about in the rooms for 18 months doing nothing, thinking that I knew better than you, coming in and judging you, coming in and making an opinion of you. You know, I'm an intelligent person. Every single person in this room, every single person listening to this recording, we're intelligent people, like it says later on in the steps. God gave his brains to use, people. He gave his brains to use. We're all intelligent people, but my intelligence was going to kill me in the end because I thought I knew. And I had no knowledge whatsoever of what I needed. I was pointing at you and judging you and giving opinion on you, on how you did things and how you didn't do things, rather than looking at what you were pointing me towards, which was this solution. And a power greater than myself that removed this nonsense, that removed it, where it doesn't affect me and where I don't fight it one day at a time, where I just live free one day at a time. It's a miracle. That's what's on the cards for you. That's the miracle of healing, like it talks about in Way Agnostics. I love this next paragraph. That might be true of certain non-alcoholic people. Notice that. They're making a differentiation. The non-alcoholic. You might be a heavy drinker. You might be a moderate drinker. But if you're not a real alcoholic, that which is described, as I said earlier on page 21, that person who at some point in their drinking career has lost all control. So that may be true of certain non-alcoholic people who, though drinking foolishly and heavily at the present time, are able to stop or moderate because their brains and bodies have not been damaged as much as ours were. They're different from us. They don't need to know all of this nonsense. Well, they don't need to know all of nonsense is the wrong word. They don't need to know all of this stuff in the big book. Because they're not the same as us. They can stop, they can moderate. I told this story about my brother. He gets all dressed up to go out to have a non-alcoholic beer. Like, he's a weirdo. Why does he do that? Weird. You know? Drives the car there, drives the car back again, and whatever, has a great night. I don't understand it. And he can even moderate so much that he only has one non-alcoholic beer. Seriously. And I can't even drink non-alcoholic drinks because non-alcoholic drinks are for non-alcoholics. That's just the way it is. Why would I want to drink? Anyway, I'm not getting down that route. So, here's the next thing for us lot. But the actual or potential perception. On the basis of self. Absolutely unable. Reading this book like I was doing in the kitchen next door by myself. Doing nothing.
No, just
Judging you. Thing. This is where they are so fantastic in the book. They never ever let us forget. This is why I say to my sponsees the importance of working the book from the very beginning, front cover page, right the way through to 164. This golden thread that runs the way through, and they never let us forget. This is a point we wish to emphasize and re-emphasize to smash home upon our alcoholic readers, as it has been revealed to us out of bitter experience. So they're re-emphasizing, they're smashing the idea home again in this paragraph for the second time in this chapter that we can't do this by ourselves on self-knowledge. The first time they emphasized it was on page 30, the very beginning of this chapter, second paragraph down. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently maybe, has to be smashed. So at the very beginning of the chapter, they're smashing home the idea, the delusion and the illusion that we are like other people has to be smashed. 9 pages later, towards the end of this chapter, we've got another 4 pages to go or so, and another story to go. We're smashing it home again. And they do the same again at the end of the chapter, and I'll point that out when we get to it. And they're going to give us this other illustration. I'm going to do a little bit of this. Again, whilst we're reading through this story, you're asking yourself, is this you? You might not be in exactly the same circumstances, but you're identifying with what is actually happening here with this person. Fred. I love Fred. Fred's story is a class story. He's the pinnacle of the 12-step call. And how they bring this alive is fantastic. He's very, very different from the carpet slippers man. He's very different from Jim the milkman. He's very different from the jaywalker. And I'll point out to you in a moment the thing that is really not in his favour, which is really important to understand, because it might be you. So you might have been the carpet slippers guy who thinks that you can stay away on your own willpower for a period of time and then drink and use normally. You might be that person that's sitting, having done the steps and only worked up to step 11 and hasn't been sponsoring yet. You know, Jim didn't enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice. He didn't work with other alcoholics, hence the reason why he went back out again. So if you're sitting only doing steps up to step 11, then have a wee think about that. Because you don't want to become Jim. And you may be the jaywalker, I don't know. Doesn't matter which one you are. But here's Fred's story. Fred is a partner in a well-known accounting firm. His income is good. He has a fine home, is happily married, and the father of promising children of college age. He is so attractive a personality that he makes friends with everyone. Is that you? Bet you a tenner it is. Bet you everybody in this room that I'm looking at is so attractive. Really and truly, yes, Monday. Everybody in this room is so attractive. The personality, absolutely. You've got friends galore and everything about you is glorious. If ever there was a successful businessman, it is Fred. Doesn't matter whether you're a successful businessman or not. I was once successful and then I wasn't. But it doesn't matter. To all appearance, he is a stable, well-balanced individual. Well, that was me. To all appearance on the outside, I seemed, stable and well-balanced. Yet inside, dying. Inside, whatever was going on was not what you were seeing on the outside. And then there was times where I thought I was stable and well-balanced and everybody on the outside could see what was happening, and I was in the delusion of not knowing what was happening. You know those moments? Putting on my makeup and thinking I look gorgeous when in actual fact it looked as if I put my makeup on a trampoline. You know, I thought I was beautiful. Rocking up to work thinking I looked like some famous actress. Then I took a glimpse at myself in the mirror and I was like, oh my God, who is this person standing in front of me? Yet he is an alcoholic. There you go. I seem stable and well balanced, and little did you know that I was an alcoholic. Although the reality of it is everybody around me knew I was an alcoholic and I was in complete and utter denial. We first saw Fred about a year ago in a hospital where he had gone to recover from a bad case of the jitters. There you go. I just went into hospital for a rest. For a wee rest. Really, he wasn't being honest with himself at that point. A bad case of the jitters. You know, the mornings when you got up and you were shaking like a leaf. And what you needed to calm the nerves was to pick up another one. Yeah, he had a bad case of the jitters. I had the jitters every morning until I picked up again or used again. It was his first experience of this kind and he was much ashamed of it. Here's the first thing about Fred. Far from admitting he was an alcoholic. So the first half of the first step, far from admitting. He wasn't letting in the idea that he was powerless over alcohol. He wasn't letting in the idea that he was powerless physically and mentally. That's his first problem. He told himself he came to hospital to rest his nerves. No problem with drink around here. I don't have these jitters because of drink. I'm just a nervous wreck. He hadn't admitted. He hadn't let the idea in. The doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realised. How many times has that happened to you? Or how many times have you been dishonest with your doctor about the amount you're using and drinking? I never told any medical person the truth. Even when I went in for a medical detox, I told a lie about how much I'd consumed. Blood tests and everything. They could see that my blood was pure alcohol. And I said, oh no, I've only had 2 glasses of wine. Really? Come on. Found on the street. Anyway. For a few days, he was depressed about his condition. Well, that was me, lying in the hospital, depressed about my condition, hooked up to all of these pipes and stuff being put into me to, medically detox me, depressed about my condition. Not really, depressed because I couldn't get to what I needed, the drink, the alcohol, the using, whatever. Delusional. I wasn't depressed about my condition. I was depressed because I couldn't get access to what I really needed and wanted. The mental obsession was still on me whilst I was lying in the hospital, hooked up to all of these machines, beeping, blood pressure, blah, blah, blah. You know the drill if you've been in hospital with this stuff. And even if you haven't been, the delusion of the things that we think that, our condition, we're depressed about our condition. Oh, my self-pity. Oh, my God, I've lost my job. Oh, my God, I've lost my driving license. Oh, my God, you don't know how hard my life is. Get over it. You're not depressed about your condition. And you won't be depressed about your condition if you solve this problem. He made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. He made up his mind. Remember, this illness centers in our mind. He made up his mind to stop altogether. That word is so important. You're coming into this fellowship to stop altogether. You're not coming in to moderate. You're not coming in to control. That's not what this is about. If you've got a problem, you're here for a reason. We're here to stop altogether. That's what we're here for. Again, the forward to the 4th edition, the last paragraph, we come to the fellowship to stay sober. Relapse does not have to be part of recovery. In my experience, relapse was my lack of recovery. No sponsor, no steps, no meetings, no service. Relapse was my lack of recovery. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so in spite of his character or standing. Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic. So he hasn't admitted he's an alcoholic. And here's the second thing that is exceptionally important, much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. He has a serious problem at this point. Now, my sponsor probably would have used a much more colourful word to describe it, but basically, this guy is up against a wall. He's not admitting that he's powerless over alcohol. He's not letting the idea in, and he's not accepting the spiritual help. He is in big time trouble here on 2 counts. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. They talked to him. The members of the fellowship went to him and talked to him about step 1. Powerless, lack of choice, power and control, that their lives had become unmanageable. They didn't go and sit and talk to him about their problems. They didn't go and talk about the isms. They had to bring him to the facts about what Dr. Silkworth was talking about, the physical allergy. They talked to them about the mental obsession, the preoccupation with this unreasonable idea of picking up the first drink. So they talked to him about step one. He was interested and conceded that he had some of the symptoms. Not both, not all. He conceded he had some of the symptoms, but he was a long way from admitting that he could do nothing about it himself. He thought he still had control. He still thought his self-knowledge would fix it. He was positive that his humiliating experience plus the knowledge he had acquired would keep him sober for the rest of his life. Self-knowledge would fix it. And I'm going to stop there. And the reason why I'm going to stop there is because over the course of the next week, ponder that little thing. Let that point filter through. Are you sitting here? Are you listening to this thinking, do you know what? What happened to me the last time? Those consequences, that behaviour of mine. I'm so mortified about what happened the last time I went out. I'm so mortified about what's happened with my family. I'm so mortified about what happened at court. I'm so mortified about whatever it is. This isn't going to happen again. Let me tell you now, it will. And it'll be worse than before. Because after every relapse, it gets worse, never better. Your self-knowledge is not going to fix this. It's just not. That's the facts of it. And I can tell you that from my own bitter experience, and the facts and the truth of how to recover are in this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's the only way you're going to find the solution, is to have a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. So ponder that thought. If you're one of those individuals who are thinking, I can do this by myself, and what Mags is telling us every week here is absolute BS, ponder that. Because the hands that were put up at the beginning of this session, those people that are demonstrating that they've done the work and that have over a year and are actively in the book and are actively sponsoring other people, are a demonstration of what life can be. Life is remarkable in full-blown recovery. Remarkable. And I'm only here because of it. I'm only here because of amazing people like you who took the time to give this to me. And I'm giving it away as much as I possibly can to build an army of people in the part of the world that I live in, to make sure that more and more women and men can recover from this hopeless state of mind and body. Because 90 years ago, a group of people decided to take the time, because they were so convinced by this message. They took the time, effort and energy to put it into words. And in 90 years, not one of those words have changed, but it has the ability to change us. So what are we doing about this? We're building an army of people that need to carry this message, like the penguins are doing every day of the week. So ponder that. If your self-knowledge is going to fix it, it won't. So happy Saturday, everybody. Look forward to seeing you next week.